Alright, so this video is going to run through the Mountain Laurel project from the start until getting the drawing prepped and ready to go on sheets. So up on As You Learn, there are a few things for you to download in here. There is the keyboard shortcut file, which I'm going to suggest that you install the keyboard shortcuts so that this way you're using the same ones I am. So all you're going to want to do is just click on that keyboard shortcut XML, and then you can open it in a new window or the same window. It's not going to matter, and that's just going to download it. And then you're also going to want to download the AutoCAD DWG, which is just going to give us something to bring into Revit to trace over. And again, you don't have to open it from AutoCAD. We just want to download it. So I'm just having those two downloads in there. And then we are going to go work from Revit. So in Revit, I'm going to start a new model. And then I don't recommend using this multidiscipline model. Instead, I would recommend going into Browse and then using this default one here, just because there's usually a little bit too much going on in that multidiscipline file. And then you're going to open that up, and you want to make sure it's set to new project and click OK. So our next step is going to be to import that AutoCAD drawing in, just to give us something to trace over to place our walls, our windows, and our doors. So I'm going to go into the Insert tab, and then I'm going to link the CAD file. This way it still saves as its own separate file and is not going to like bog down my Revit file. And I'm going to go look in my Downloads folder. And I want to bring in the Mountain Laurel, but I don't want to bring in necessarily the entire drawing. I'm going to select the layers I want. So I'm going to set layers to specify, and then I'm going to open it up. And when I go to load this in, I'm going to uncheck everything in here except for these layers that say a plan next to them. I only want the floor plan layers. So I'm going to click check none, and then I'm going to go back and recheck all of my A plan layers. And I'll click OK. It's going to look like not much got brought in, but really it's just because our drawing's stuck up here. So what we're going to want to do is click on our drawing, but we can't move it because it's pinned. So I'm going to unpin our drawing, and I'm going to drag it, click and drag it inside these 4 elevation markers. And now I have something to just kind of generally trace over for all of my walls, windows, and my doors. And probably after this step, maybe after we do our porches, I'm actually going to delete our AutoCAD file. A little different than we did in class, though. So I'm going to go back into the Architecture tab, and actually before I go into the Architecture tab, I'm going to load in my keyboard shortcut file that we downloaded. So that is the keyboard shortcut KS to open up keyboard shortcuts. And then what we'll do is we will import keyboard shortcuts and look in our downloads folder, and then it's this file right here, and we'll overwrite the existing ones so that this way you and I will have matching ones. So we'll override it, and then we'll click OK. So there's just a few things that I've made custom keyboard shortcuts for. However, our tool that we're going to use first is not one of them. So we're going to use the Wall tool, which is keyboard shortcut WA. We're back in the Architecture tab, this wall button here. And for all of our exterior walls, I'm just going to use a generic 8-inch wall, and I want to pay attention to its base constraint and its top constraint. So I have it starting on level 1, and for a top constraint, I want to set this to go up to level 2, and then I'm going to trace around all of my exterior walls. And I'm going to go in a clockwise motion. I'm going to go around this way around the building, and that will then help me later on when I go to change the parameters of the walls. So I'm going to start in this corner by clicking. I'm going to go till I've got that intersection and click again. I'm going to go back down. I'm going to go over. Make sure you're going over all of your doors and windows. It feels weird, but we need a door, or we need a wall to put a door or a window in. So I'm just clicking to go around all of my walls. And then once I'm done, I'm going to hit escape 700 times to end. I'm going to use the wall tool again to do all of my interior walls, but I'm just going to do them with a different wall type. So that way when I go to edit the parameters, they'll both kind of change along together. So I'm going to go back into the wall tool, which is keyboard shortcut WA, or again, this button here. For my wall type, instead of this generic 8-inch one, I'll use a generic 5-inch one for these walls. And again, I want to pay attention to my base and top constraints, which it recognized or it kept the same constraints from last time. So what I'm going to do then is kind of trace around some of my interior walls, and I don't have to be exactly perfect on it because we're going to add dimensions later to perfect it. So you want to make sure too that you're going all the way across things like doors. So like that would all be an interior wall. I'll do one interior wall here, another one here, and I know I was pretty off there, it's okay. Since my chain's still going, I'll hit escape once to stay in the tool. I'm going to put another chain here, another wall here, and here. So I'm just tracing around all my interior walls. And if I'm not exactly on there, it's okay. I'm going to hit escape once to stay in the wall tool, but just end that wall segment. I'll do another 3 walls here. Escape once. Here. One going all the way across here because we got to go over where any of our doors are. Put in our closet walls. And then the separator for them. I think I just got this bathroom left and I should be done with my walls, but I'll go back and check. So since I want this all to be one segment, I'm just going to hit escape once so I can just draw that wall in. Another one here. And yes, that is all of my walls. So now I'm going to hit escape about 700 times to end the wall tool. Next, I'm going to kind of fix all of these awkward corners from where I go to large exterior wall to skinny interior. So to do that, I'm going to use the Align tool, which is keyboard shortcut AL. And you'll notice here in my Align settings, I have it set to prefer faces of core, and I also have it set to automatically lock. When we do an Align, and I recommend you do that too, when I do an Align, I want to click on the thing I want to keep in place, which would be this wall's face. So I'm going to click on that wall, and then the thing I want to bring to it, which would be this wall's face. And it'll bring them down, and it locked them together. And I like locking them because if I hit escape a bunch of times, if later on in the project this wall moves, that wall is going to move with it. So I'm just using my arrow keys to kind of nudge it around. So I'll do the same thing down here. I'll Align again is keyboard shortcut AL, or if you're looking for it as a button, it's in the Modify tab, and then it's this button here that looks like a graph. Click on the thing you want to keep, which is this wall, and the thing you want to bring to it, which is that one. That is all of our walls kind of set. So I'll hit escape about 700 times. Now, we've talked in class before about kind of wanting a solid poche in those walls, but we can't see it by default in this hidden line view. So how we can put a solid fill into our hidden line walls is to go into our visibility and graphics settings, which is keyboard shortcut VG, or this button right here. And then we're going to go to our wall settings for our floor plan. So I'm going to go to W for walls. And I want to override the cut pattern that's being shown. So I'm going to click on where it says override. And for pattern, I'm going to set it to a solid fill. And color, I'm going to make it like a light gray color. And I can click OK. okay, okay again. And now my walls have this solid fill even though I'm in hidden line mode. And it just kind of makes it a little easier to see, like if maybe we forgot a wall, or even then, especially on top of our AutoCAD drawing. Now I have open on another screen my AutoCAD drawing, so I can just get my measurements from there pretty easily. But you have from class either access to a PDF copy, you also have access to the AutoCAD file, and then a paper copy of all of the floor plan measurements. So when I'm putting in my windows and my doors and I'm adjusting like their sizes, I'm getting their sizes from the drawing here. So this door here in this bathroom is 2 foot 4 feet wide by 6 foot 8 tall. And this door is also 2 foot 4 foot, while this bedroom door is 2 foot 8 foot wide and then 6 foot 8 foot tall. All of our doors in the entire project have a height of 6 foot 8. All of our windows also have a header height of 6 foot 8. So all of our windows are going to have the same top point, but they're all going to have different sills or different bottoms in there. So I'm just not going to be going back and forth on screen between this file and Revit, but I just want to make you aware that that's where I'm getting measurements from. So I'm going to start with just these regular swing doors throughout my interior of the project, and then I'll go and put in my closet doors as well as my exterior doors, because I'm going to need to use the load family tool in order to bring those in. So just place a door. I'm going to go back into the architecture tab, and I can use keyboard shortcut DR to start the door tool, or if I hit escape 100,000 times, I can also use this button here to start the door tool. So when I start door, we have just single flush interior doors loaded into this project, but we don't have one that's like 2 foot 4 by 6 foot 8. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to go into edit type to make our own custom door. Whenever we're in the edit type tool, we should always duplicate before we do anything else, before we change any parameters in here. But when we go to do our walls, we're actually going to break our rule a little bit. So I should always duplicate and then give it a name. I'm going to call this door 2 foot 4 inches by 6 foot 8 inches. The name you give it has no bearing on its function, but it helps you know what it is later on in the project. And then I'm going to change its height to 6 foot 8. You don't actually have to type units. If I just do 6 space 8, it'll know 6 foot, but 6 is the foot and 8 is the inches. And then a width of 2 foot 4. And then I'll click OK. And we'll see that my type has updated here in the properties. To place this door, I'm going to just hover over the wall, and I can control which way it swings in to the room by just kind of which side of the wall I hover over on before I click. And I can also use the space bar to flip the door around. After you place the door, you can also change its location. So I'm just going to roughly put these 2 foot 4 doors here. I'm not going to worry too much about where they sit. So again, space bar can flip it. This closet door is 2 foot 4 by 6 foot 8. The one here for our air handler. So again, where you hover, and then you can use the space bar to flip it. And I'll just double check my drawing. I believe those are all of our 2 foot 4 by 6 foot 8 doors. So then I'll work on my 2 foot 8 by 6 foot 8 doors. So I'm going to go back into edit type. I want to make sure I duplicate it before I change these parameters, because if I change the width right now without duplicating it, it's going to change all of these doors that I've already placed. So I want to make a new door type, or duplicate this door type, and I'm going to call it 2 foot 8 by 6 foot 8. I don't really have to put the inches marks in there, but I like doing it. And then I want a height of 6 foot 8 and a width of 2 foot 8. Okay. And now I have a door for my bedroom. So this bedroom, I'll hit the space bar to flip that. Another door here in this bedroom. For the master as well. And I believe those are all of my 2'8" doors. This door here for the laundry room and kind of utility room is going to be 3 foot wide. So again, I'm going to go into edit type. I'm going to duplicate, and I'm going to call this one 3 foot by 6'8". The name doesn't matter, but it's just helpful for you to know what it is later. And I'm going to give it a width of 3 foot. And I can even just do 3, enter, and it'll assume 0 inches. Okay. And I'm going to put a door on here. Now with these bifold doors for this water heater and this linen closet, we're going to put in just a swing door because there isn't a bifold door that we can use by default in Revit. So I'm just going to make a 2 foot wide bifold door, or swing door, excuse me. I'm going to do edit type. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to call it 2 foot by 6'8". Okay. And for its width, I'll make it just 2 feet. Hit enter. I'm just going to kind of shove it in there a little bit. A little awkward, but maybe we'll fix it later once we adjust our sizes. And I'll put another one in here. And then for our pantry, this door is 1'8" by 6'8". So again, edit type, duplicate. It's going to be 1'8" by 6'8". Okay. And then we'll change our width to 1'8". Okay. I'll use the space bar to flip that door and place it. For our other doors in our closets here, I'm actually just going to put sliding interior doors in there, or sliding closet doors. So first I've got to load the family in for sliding doors. So this is a command, I'll hit escape 100 times, that doesn't have a keyboard shortcut by default. But if you installed my keyboard shortcut file, that's going to be the keyboard shortcut LF. If you are not signed into an Autodesk account, it's going to prompt you when you try to open this up to sign in. You need to be in an Autodesk account in order to access this tool here. If you don't want to use my keyboard shortcuts to get to load Autodesk Family, you're going to go into the Insert tab and click on this button here. But it's kind of annoying to have to go back and forth. So that's why I recommend making a keyboard shortcut for it of LF, which if you installed my keyboard shortcuts, it'll be in there. So we're going to look in the door category for an interior sliding door. And you want to pay attention to the name underneath it. Sometimes students will load this one in, which this is a pocket door. It's going to go into the wall. We want an interior sliding door. So I'm going to load this one in. And for its size, looking at my drawing, I want a 4 foot wide by 6'8". Sometimes it might not prompt you for a size type, and sometimes the size type we want doesn't exist, so we kind of have to make our own. So I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to start the door tool, which is keyboard shortcut DR, and you'll see that it defaulted now to that last door I loaded in here. But if I wanted to go back to flush doors, I could click on here and I could go back to a flush one. But I don't. This is the one I want to use. And so I'm just going to put these, again, kind of roughly on top of where they exist in my drawing. And then I'm going to put 2 exterior doors here for my front porch and my back porch. So for those, I'm going to use load family again, which is keyboard shortcut F to start the command. And then we kind of have two exterior doors we can pick from right now. We've got this one or this one. This is where you get your creative freedom in this project, so pick whichever one you want. And we're going to load it. For our size, we're going to want 36 by 80 or 3 foot by 6 foot 8. And since I never left the door tool when I started the load family tool, it kind of just auto switched. But if I didn't, I would just have to use DR to start the door tool again. I'm just going to put these two doors, use my space bar, roughly on top of here. We're going to use dimensions later to move them to a specific spot. Then I can hit escape 400 times, and now I have my doors done. Now, our next piece for our model would be to do all of our windows. And so for our windows, we can't really see where they are because they're inside this wall here in the drawing. So there's a window there, but I can't really see where it should go or where it should be placed. So if I want to roughly put it on there, what I'm going to do is adjust my visual style just so I can see where I'm putting it. So that is this little cube down here. I'm going to put my visual style into wireframe, and now I can see where those windows are. So I'm going to use the window tool, which is keyboard shortcut WN, or in the architecture tab, it's this button here. And for our window style, all of our windows are going to be double hung. So I'm going to use a double hung window. For this one in the bathroom, I want one that's 2 foot 4 inches wide and 3 foot tall, which doesn't exist. So I'm going to pick one of these. And then I'm going to go into edit its type. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to call it 2 foot 4 inches by 6 foot 8 inch, or in pilot mode, it would be 3 foot 0 inches. I'll click OK. And then in the parameters, I can adjust its width and height. So I want 2 foot 4 by 3 foot. Okay. And I have one window in here. We want that bar kind of sitting towards the outside. In this bathroom. We also have another window in our project over the kitchen sink that is the same size. Okay. For these two in this bedroom, these are 2 foot 8 wide by 4 foot tall. So I'll go into edit type. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to give it a name. I'll call mine 2 foot 8 by 4 foot. Width of 2 foot 8. Height of 4 feet. Okay. Here and another one here. Let me check to see if there's any other windows of that size in this project, but they're not. Now down here, we're actually going to load in a family for a double hung window. So that way it comes with the two in there. So I'm going to use keyboard shortcut LF that we put in there. And I'm going to go out of the door category into the windows. There it is. And then towards the bottom are some double hung windows. That's a casement. So here's window, double hung double. I'm going to load that in. Size-wise, we're looking for 6 feet wide by 5 foot tall, which doesn't exist, but we can pick something, load it in, and then once it's loaded, we can go into edit type, duplicate it, and make it 6 foot wide by 5 foot tall. Okay, and then change its width and its height. Here and one here. I'm just going to kind of rough them in. And then we got two windows here, which we're going to have to do load family again. Load family. I'm still in the windows. I know just from doing the project before that all the way towards the bottom, I could use like this window here, or I could use this one. Kind of both will suit the needs I'm looking for. I could even, if I want, I could do like this one or this one. But I'm just going to load that one in. Load family. This one didn't prompt me for a size. It just brought in a couple of sizes, but none of them are the size I want. So I can go into edit type. I can duplicate. And this one is 8 foot 8 inches wide in total by 5 foot tall. Okay, and I can change its width to 8 foot 8 by 5 foot. I'll click OK. And then I'm going to put these in. That would be my windows, walls, and doors kind of roughed in and placed. So I'm going to put my visual style here back into hidden line. And kind of for my next couple of steps, I'm going to hide the AutoCAD drawing. I'll want it sort of kind of to put in these floor decks, but after that, I'll probably be done with it. So I'm going to hit escape about 700,000 times to get window tool, and then to get rid of my AutoCAD drawing temporarily, I'm just going to click on the AutoCAD drawing, and then I'm going to come down here to these glasses, and I'm going to say I want to hide this element. Really, I could have also clicked on hide category since it was the only thing in that element or in that category, but I'm just going to hide it, and then once I want to get it back, I could go click on my glasses again and hit reset, and then it would come back. So again, click on it, glasses, we're going to hide that element. The next thing we're going to want to do is adjust some of our window heights. So if I go look at my building three-dimensionally, which we can also click on our CAD drawing here and then hide the element, so that way it's gone in here as well. We want all of our windows to have the same header height. So to easily change all of our windows, what I'm going to do is highlight everything in my drawing, and then I'm going to use the filter tool, which is here and here, and I'm going to filter everything out of my selection except these 8 windows. So once I only have these 8 windows, I have a limited amount of properties I can use within it. But one thing at the very bottom is this head height. So right now they all have a sill height of 3 feet. I'm going to change it so that since they're all different sizes in height, they just all have a head height of 6 foot 8. And then I'll move my cursor out of the properties panel to apply it in there. So anytime you think you're typing, if you move your cursor out of the properties panel, you're no longer typing. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're working. My next step will be to adjust the parameters for all of my exterior walls and my interior walls. So if I click on one of my exterior walls and I go into edit its type, I can give it things like siding, sheathing, stud, and then interior finish. What we did with all of our doors and windows was I told you to duplicate them beforehand. What I'm going to do this time is I'm not going to duplicate these walls though to make a new type. Instead, I'm just going to rename it from generic 8-inch to exterior wall. And then I'm going to go edit this wall structure. So this is where we can build out those different layers of our wall, similar to how we put in those offsets in AutoCAD. I'm going to insert 3 additional layers into here, and I'm going to move 2 of them up. So I'm going to click 2 of these layers and move them above the core boundary, and I'm going to click on this layer and move it below the core boundary. The next thing I'm going to do is adjust their function. So row 1 is going to be our outside finish. And so I'm going to click on it and say I want finish 1. Row 2 is going to be our sheathing. So we're going to give it a function of substrate. Row 4 will be our stud, so we'll leave it as structure, and row 6 is going to be our drywall, so we're going to give that a function of finish 2. Next, I'm going to adjust their thicknesses here so that this way they all have true material thickness. I'm going to use the same materials and measurements that we used from the 3-room shed. So our siding is going to have a total thickness of 3/4 of an inch. Our plywood sheathing is going to have 1/2 of an inch or 0.5. Our stud will be a 2x6, so we'll frame it out of a 5.5 inch because a 2x6 is 1.5 by 5.5. And then our drywall will be a 1/2 inch. So if you've typed all of these numbers correct, your total thickness up here should read as 7.25. And then we're going to adjust each one of these materials thicknesses, or each one of these layers materials. So I'm going to click where it says by category for like my drywall material, and then I'll click on this little ... button that pops up. When you're first using Revit, it's going to just put you in this identity tag, which I don't really use often. Sometimes I'll use this description though to help put like material tags and annotations in a little faster. But this graphics tab has a lot more useful information. And I'm just going to search for gypsum. Here's some gypsum wallboard. And you'll see here that it's automatically checking off to use sand in a section view for a cut pattern, which is great. That's what I want it to do. But I always want to look at if it's got a cut pattern and a surface pattern in there. So then I'm going to click OK. I don't ever really bother checking off use render appearance because I don't really work outside of hidden line mode. But if you want to be working in consistent colors, I'd recommend checking that off. But I'm just going to click OK. For our row 4, I'm going to click where it says by category and then click on that ... We're going to make this our stud layer, but to build it out kind of accurately, I'm actually going to search for a joist. And I'm going to use this wood joist rafter layer with batt insulation. And I don't want a surface pattern or a cut pattern, so I'm happy to see they're set to none. So I'll click OK. For row 2, this will be our plywood sheathing. So I'm going to click on where it got my ... I'm going to search for plywood. And I do want a cut pattern on this, but I just don't see a cut pattern in there. So I'm going to click on the cut pattern. I'm going to set that to plywood. So that way when I make a section cut, it'll automatically put that hatch in there. And then the last material I'm going to use for my finish, I'll click on my ... is I'm going to search for siding, but it's going to tell me that siding doesn't exist. What I need to do is go into my materials library down here by clicking on this little up arrow, and I need to load this siding into my project. So to load it in, I'm going to click on that up arrow to load it into my document. And then I'm going to put a surface pattern on it. So in my elevations, it automatically has a pattern. And I'm going to give it a surface pattern of horizontal stripes. And I'll click OK. I don't want a cut pattern in there. And I'll click OK. And then I'm going to click OK. And after it loads one final time, I'm going to click OK. And we'll see then in our drawing, our wall shifted size ever so slightly, but it went from 8 inches to 7.25 inch, so not that much. But I now have this hatch pattern on the outside of my walls. If you're looking around and if you try to orbit, which is holding shift in the scroll wheel, and you notice that the hatch pattern is on the inside, it's because your wall is inside out. So on this wall, my hatch pattern is inside out, so I can click on that wall and hit the space bar to flip it. So if any of your exterior walls are inside out, just go ahead and orbit around and check them to make sure they're all with the outside out. We'll do the same parameter process with all of our interior walls. So I'm going to click on an interior wall. I'm going to go into edit type. And again, I should always duplicate, but this time I'm not, because if I don't, it'll update every interior wall kind of in one go. So instead, I'm just going to rename it, and I'm going to call it interior wall. And then I'm going to go to edit its structure. And this one is just going to be drywall, a 2x4, and then drywall. So I'm going to insert in 2 additional layers, move one above the core boundary, and one underneath. In row 1, it's going to have a function of finish 2. Row 3 will have a function of structure. Row 5 will have a function of finish 2. I always use finish 2 for interior finishes. For the material, row 1 and row 5 will both be gypsum wallboard. So I'm going to gypsum, and I'll click OK, which I don't think, okay, I did. It's like, I don't know if I made it actually gypsum. Row 5, I'm going to click on here and then make that also gypsum wallboard. And these settings will just always be from whatever you have in the project. So it's already set with my cut pattern. And then I'll put my stud layer in. But again, I'm going to search for joist, even though it's kind of weird. I'm going to give it the one that doesn't have bat insulation, because that's pretty typical for interior. And I'll click OK. And then for my thicknesses, I've got a 1/2 inch gypsum wallboard. I have a 2x4, which is actually 3.5. And then I have another 1/2 inch gypsum wallboard. So if I've typed these numbers incorrectly, my total thickness up here is 4.5. I'll click OK. I'll click OK. And my walls have changed ever so slightly. If I go to my level 1 floor plan, which sure, I'll save my work. I'm just going to call mine Mount Laurel Practice. When I go into my floor plan, I can't see all of the layers in my walls for 2 reasons. 1, my detail level, and 2, my drawing scale. So to update my detail level, I can do that here or here. So it's currently set to coarse. If I put it on fine, I'll be able to see a little bit more information in that wall. But it's also just my drawing scale is currently set to 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. So if I make my drawing scale 1/4 inch equals a foot, kind of my line weights are going to shrink. What really happened is the line weight stayed the exact same thickness, the drawing got larger is the difference that happened. Additionally, if I want to get rid of line weight temporarily, I can use the command TL for thin lines. So that is keyboard shortcut TL to turn thin lines on, and then TL to turn it off. Or this little button right here can also toggle thin lines on and off. Next, I'm actually going to do my dimensions, which we did a little bit later in class when we were meeting, but I'll do my dimensions next, and then I'll do my floors and my roof to it. So for our dimensions in our floor plan, we always want to make sure we're taking our dimensions from the face of stud. To make it a little easier to select your face of stud, I would recommend having thin lines on, which again is TL to turn thin lines on or off. And then when we use the dimension tool, there's settings we can play around with to make it sort of want to default to the face of stud. So again, I'm just going to be going off of if there's a dimension in the PDF or AutoCAD file from this project, I'm going to add that dimension to my building. When we place our dimensions, they're not going to have the correct number in them to begin with, but we can go and add them or adjust them later. So to add a dimension, it is keyboard shortcut DI, or this button right up here in your quick toolbar. And by default, your dimensions want to go to the centers of walls. We can change that to say we want to go to the faces of core. And if you remember back to building out that core boundary, we only had the stud in the core boundary. So if I set this to faces of core, I can hover over that and to click on the face of core. If it wants to default to the to sort of tab your way through, please don't hold the tab key down. You just want to click on it, but we want to go to our face of core. So I'm going to click on this wall. Then I'll click on this wall, and then I'll click up to place my dimension. So overall, and then I'll hit escape 100 times to exit the command. Overall, I want my building to be 50 feet. I'm 3/4 of an inch off. So if I want to change that number, I can click on this wall or this wall to change it. If I click on this wall, it's going to move and change this number to 50. You'll see that this slightly shifted this way. If I use Control Z to undo that, I can click on this wall to change this number to 50. And that wall slightly shifted that way. So the reference you click on when you're adjusting dimensions is going to matter for it. So I'm going to do a dimension chain for my next dimensions that are going from face of stud to face of stud to face of stud. So I'm going to do this chain that's up here. So I'm going to start the dimension tool again, which is keyboard shortcut DI. I want to make sure it's set to faces of core. So I'm going to click on face of core to face of core to face of core. And then I can click up to place it. By default, these numbers happen to already be correct. However, if yours weren't when I placed it, because maybe yours weren't correct from first placement, which is fine, you'd want to click on this center one, because if I move this center one, if I change that to 25, that changes. So if I make one number 24, and I've already established the whole building from here to here needs to be 50, then I can kind of make them both change. But you'll see when I click on this wall, how this number and this number became editable. So I want to pay attention when I click on kind of what highlights to get adjusted. I won't go back and forth between the AutoCAD drawing anymore. I'm just going to do my next chain because I have the AutoCAD drawing open on another screen. So I'm going to do another dimension chain. Again, keyboard shortcut DI. Click on face of core to face of core to face of core, face, and then this one is going to measure the stud thickness. So I'm going to go from face to face to face. Face. Don't be afraid to zoom in and pan around while you're doing this. Face, and then face, face. And I'll click up to place it. If, I'll hit escape 100 times to exit it. If your numbers are kind of like really large, it's because you did not adjust the scale here. So if I put my scale to 1/8 of an inch, my text is really big and it's kind of hard to see some of these numbers. When I change my view scale, the text actually stayed the exact same size, but the drawing got twice as big. So that's why the text looks like it shrunk. So what I'm going to do to adjust these numbers is I'm going to kind of work my way down a line. So I'm going to click on this wall to adjust this measurement to 5 foot 5.5. Then I'll click on this wall to adjust this measurement to 1 foot. Then I'll go to this wall to take this measurement to 12 foot 9.5, which then this one kind of resolved itself because all of these numbers have to go to 26 in total. So you'll notice that I'm staying away from these exteriors when I'm adjusting these numbers. Then I'll click on this wall to change this number to 4 foot 1/2 inch. I'll click on this wall to change this number to 2 foot 3.5. I'll click on this wall to change this number to 7 foot 8. And then this measurement kind of resolved itself because again, these all by this one standard, they all have to add up to 24. My next chain will be measuring to the center of the windows. So again, I'll start the dimension tool with keyword shortcut DI. I'm going to go from face of stud to center of window to center of window to face of stud, and then click up to place the dimensions. I'll hit escape 100 times. And whenever I'm adjusting centers, I want to click on the window or so to select it. Sometimes these witnesses will get in the way, which is really annoying. So then I'll have to zoom in, click on it. So now I can actually get to this number. It's a little frustrating, but worse things have happened to me. And then I'll click on this window to adjust this number. And then that one kind of resolved itself because these three numbers have to add up to that number. We have another chain for this center of this door here on this wall. So again, that's going to be keyword shortcut DI from face of stud to center to face, and then I'll click up to place it, escape 100 times, and then I'll click on this door to change this number. So that is that side of the building dimensioned. Now I'll kind of work my way down this side. So I'll first just do an overall dimension, which is keyword shortcut DI from face of stud to face. Then I'll click to place it, hit escape to end the command, and then to change that number, I could click on either of these walls, but I'll do this one, and I'll change it to 28. Escape 100 times, keyword shortcut DI, do my exterior faces, so from face of stud to face of stud to face of stud. This wall has so much installed, it's a little hard to do, but we can do it. To face of stud, click out to place. I'll hit escape 100 times. And then to change my numbers, I'll go to this one and I'll adjust that number to 6 foot. I'll click on this wall. So I'll just zoom in to try to get the wall. And then I'll make that number 18 feet. And then that kind of resolved itself to make an even 28 feet. And then I'll measure to the centers of, the faces of my walls installed on this one. So again, keyword shortcut DI. I'm going to go from face to face to face, face. Make sure that this one's going to this one's face. Okay. Click to place, escape 100 times. Now to adjust it, I'm going to work my way down the line. So I'll click on this wall to change this number to 8 foot 3.5. I'll click on this wall to change this number to 2 foot 3.5. And that one kind of resolved itself because they all have to add up to 18. For my center window here, again, I'll start the dimension tool, which is DI. I'll click on face of stud to center of window to face of stud. And I'll click to place it, hit escape 100 times, click on the window. And I could really change either of these numbers, but I'm going to do 4 foot 8.5. Whoop. Oh, I see. See, I did something wrong. Cool. I can show you how to fix it. So I did 4 foot 8.5, and then this number is not correct according to my AutoCAD drawing. I went to the wrong face. So what I can do is I can click on this dimension and I can drag this middle one. So if I click and drag that middle one, I can actually change what face it goes to. Then I can hit escape 100 times, click on this window. And now if I make this 4 foot, that number's correct. So sometimes if you can't get your numbers to add right, double check that you're actually going to the face that you're supposed to go to. Right? Now let's do this side here. So again, DI for dimension. I'll do my exteriors first. Place it. Escape 17 times to end the command. I'll click on this middle wall to adjust these numbers. And since I have this locked to it, that wall moved along with it. I'll do keyboard shortcut DI again to do all of my walls, not just my exteriors. So I'm going to the face of the interiors as well. Place it, hit escape 100 times, and adjust my numbers. So I'll click on that wall, 12 foot 5.5. Click on this wall, 2 foot 3.5, and then this one resolved itself. I'll use the dimension tool again from face of stud to center of window to face of stud. Click to place it, hit escape 100 times, and then I'm going to adjust this number to be just 7 feet. And another window measurement here, so DI for dimension, from face of stud to center of window to face of stud. Click to place your dimension, hit escape 100 times, click on the window, change that number. We also then have our centers on this wall. So we're going to do DI for dimension from the face of stud to the, there was, center of this window, center of the door, center of the window, face of stud. Click to place it. Adjust our measurements, which Control Z. So I want to click on that one. Then I'll click on this door to change this one. And then I'll click on this window to change this one. All resolve themselves because they have to add up to 24. One final exterior wall that we're going to dimension is going to be keyboard shortcut. You guessed it, DI. And I'm going to go from face of stud to face to face to inside and outside. Click to place it, hit escape, and then work my way through a line. And you could work your way up or you could work your way down, but you want to just kind of work through a line. So I'll click on the wall, adjust this measurement, click on this wall, adjust this measurement, and then that one should have fixed itself, but did I do something wrong? Let's see. I did. I typed that in totally wrong. It's 5 foot 5.5. And now that measurement's correct. I'll do to the center of my windows. So I'll do again keyboard shortcut DI. going to go from the inner one this time to the center of this window. Do that face of stud, click to place, hit escape 100 times, click on that window. If these witnesses get in the way when you're trying to click, zoom in and then click, and it makes it a little easier to click on the one you actually want. 5'11.5", and we hit escape. Got some interior dimensions to work on as well. Some of them I'll do as lines, some of them I'll do individually. So we've got sitting in the like hallway here, kind of a big string of them. So I'm going to do keyboard shortcut DI from face of stud to this linen closet stud, this other side of the linen closet, the bathroom entry wall. We don't have one to there. I was going to say one to here, one to this wall, and this wall. And then I'll click to place it. And then I'll hit escape 100 times and work my way through this line. So I'll click on that wall to adjust this number. I'll click on this wall to adjust that number, but it is correct, so I'm actually going to leave it be. I'll click on this wall to adjust this number. I'll click on this wall to adjust this number, but again, it just happened to be correct. So I'll go to this wall to this number, this wall to this number. Sometimes you may get like an error code or like I'll try to this. Maybe you move the wall and your door's in the way. You can just click on that door and use your arrow keys to kind of shuffle that door over. We'll go to this wall to adjust this number, but that number happened to already be correct. That was just a little bit of happenstance. I guess not too much though, because it was dimensioned here to where to get to it. Okay, and then I'll do another big interior chain. We've got another chain going all the way down here internally. So again, that's going to be keyboard shortcut DI. From one point to another point, another stud, my other stud, two stud, stud, and stud. And then I'll click to place it. And then again, I'll move my way kind of through a chain. So I'll hit escape 100 times. I'm going to click on this wall to change this number, which is 6'1.5". I'll click on this wall to change this number. This wall to change that number, but it happens to already be correct, which is cool. Sometimes that happens. We like when that happens. I'll click on this wall to change this number. I want it to be 2'11". This one 2'7", and then this one to 6 foot. So I would click on this wall to 2'7", and that should resolve itself. Okay, we are getting close to being done with dimensions, which I know is no one's favorite part, but they are incredibly necessary, and they get easier the more and more you place them and practice them. So we'll do a dimension from face of stud to face of stud. Click to place it, which this should also already be correct just because we've already kind of defined what this is based on that, and we've already done all of our exteriors. For our wall here in this kitchen, I'm going to go from face to face, click to place it, hit escape 100 times, click on this wall, and change this number. And then we've got one here for our pantry as well, for our pantry depth. from face to face, click to place, click on this wall, click on that number. I really wish like we could get rid of witnesses and not, no, that sounded weird, but like get rid of those witness measurements that pop up and kind of get in the way. They are kind of annoying to me, at least. I'm going to flip that door around just because I don't like how they were squeezed up against each other. All right. So with that, whoop, I missed one. I missed this linen closet here. So I from face to face, click to place, hit escape. I'll click on this wall and then click on that dimension, 2 foot 9.5. I will say that the dimensioning gets a little easier. I'll even move that dimension out a little bit. It's easier with time to practice of just placing your dimensions and knowing like how to move them and manipulate them. They are not the fun part of the project, but they are a very necessary part of the project. The next thing we'll do is we'll add a subfloor and then we'll put our finished floors on top of it. This step might be a little weird to do with your dimensions in the drawing. So we can also, just like we hid the AutoCAD file, we can hide the dimensions. We took all of that time to put them in there, so we don't want to delete them. We just want to get rid of them. So if I click on one of the dimension lines, I can go to my glasses down here and I can hide this category of dimensions. So that way the dimensions are gone, but they're still in my project. If I click on this light bulb, it'll show me all the things I currently have hidden. So it shows me the AutoCAD drawing and those dimensions. And then I can click on the light bulb again to turn that setting off. But it's probably going to make it a lot easier to put our floor in. If you want to turn thin lines back off, you can as well. So again, that's TL to turn thin lines on or off. So if you want to be able to see some line weight, you can turn them. So the way I do a floor is I'm actually going to do 2 floor systems with one kind of floating on top of another one. So I'm going to make a floor that is just like my joist and my subfloor. And then I'm going to make other floors hanging out on top of them that are the individual finishes for certain rooms or areas. So the floor tool does not have a keyboard shortcut. It is just in the architecture tab, this button that says floor. And when you start the floor tool, you are sort of locked into this drawing mode or sketching mode. So we have to draw in a loop of where we want our floor to be. So what I'm going to do is hover over one of my exterior walls and hit the tab key once and then click to get a chain of all of my exterior walls. And I want it going to the core boundary, which is what it did. If I was hovering over this inside area, it might be going to the core boundary inside my house. So then I would want to click on these flip arrows wherever they are in your drawing. It's going to depend on which wall you clicked on because I'm going to want to flip them around for it. So you want to make sure that you have this flipped to that outside core boundary. Before we finish up this subfloor piece, we're also going to want to make a floor with these different layers for it. So to do that, the easiest way would be to go into my floor properties, and I'm going to use one of these wood joist options. Doesn't really matter which one. And then I'm going to go into edit type. I'm going to duplicate it. So we're back in our practice of always duplicating beforehand. And I'm going to call this just like subfloor. Click OK. I'm going to go into edit its structure. And then I'm going to remove the finishes. So I'm going to click on row 1 and hit delete. My new row 1, I'm also going to delete. So this floor, quote unquote, is only going to have just plywood and then the joist layer. So it just has subfloor and a joist. So it's 10 inches thick in total. I'll click OK. I'll click OK. And then I'll click OK. And it's not really going to look like a whole lot happened in our plan at the moment. However, if I go into my 3D view, which again, I'll use this little button here to go in there, we can see sort of now that we've got this floor hanging out under here. Now our floor is 10 inches thick total. So we want to bring our siding and our sheathing down for all of our exterior walls 10 inches as well. So to do that, I want to click on all of my exterior walls. So I could do that a couple of ways. One is I could hover over the edge of one of them, hit tab, and then click to get the chain of them. Another way I could go about doing it is clicking on one and then right clicking and say select all instances in project, and it'll select all of the exterior walls in the project. Or I could click one and I could hold the control key, and then I could go around and click on all the others. All of these will get me the same end result. I just want all of my exterior walls. And then I'm going to give them a base offset of negative whatever my floor thickness is. So I'm going to give them a base offset of negative 0 feet 10 inches. And then I'll move my cursor out of the properties panel. So I brought those walls down 10 inches. So now they are covering that floor in there. I'm going to go back into my level 1 floor plan, and now I'm going to add floor finishes into my bathrooms and my bedrooms and the rest of my building. So to do those, I'm going to start the floor tool again, which is this button up here in the architecture tab. I'm going to select a floor type. I'll do the bathrooms first, so I'm going to select the ceramic tile one, but I only want just tiles and nothing else to show up in my floor plan. So I'm going to go into edit type. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to call it just tile only. Name you give it doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to edit the structure so that the only thing I have in this layer is going to just be this 1/4 inch tile. So I'm going to delete all of these layers. Something does have to exist in the core boundary, so I am going to have to move row 1 down. In the 2026 update, you can now have things that don't exist in the core boundary. You could just leave something hanging up in there. It's kind of cool. And then we have these mosaic tiles. If we wanted to change it, we can click on this little dot, dot, dot. And we can even make it like if I wanted a hatch pattern to show up in the floor plan, I can give it a pattern of, say, a crosshatch. And even then, I can give it a color of a pattern. So let's say I want it in there, but I kind of want it faded a little bit. I can make it like a light gray color. And then I'll click OK. And then I'll click OK. And then I want to pay attention to its thickness. So it's a 1/4 inch thick. So I'll say OK and OK one more time. And I want to offset it up, or positive offset it, the thickness of this floor, which is a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to give it a positive offset, a 1/4 inch. So that way it's kind of just laying on top of that subfloor. Then instead of using the pick wall tool like we did last time, I'm going to draw in floor lines around my interior. So I'm going to use just the line tool to just draw around my walls in my bathroom. And I'll kind of even do this threshold of this door. You can absolutely just skip over like some parts. So I'll show you what I mean when I do the carpet. But like one thing I really like about this method is that I'm going to get a really accurate amount of like how much tiling I have in my house. And so I'll also do in here, just tracing around, which, whoops, I'll do Control Z to undo that. I went a little bit too much. I'll even do this door threshold. Click, and then I gotta click again. It has to be a closed loop, but they can be two separate closed loops. Then I'm gonna hit the green check. Sure, I'd love to save my project. And so now I have this tile floor in here. If you didn't put a surface pattern on it, then you're not going to see a hatch in there, but I do have a tile floor now. I'll put carpet in like my bedroom, and I'll show you like how I could have potentially just like skipped over this wall and just done this all as one big loop here. So I'm going to do carpet in this room. So again, to start the floor tool is this button here. I'm going to go into edit its type. I'm going to duplicate this material, and I'm going to call this one carpet only. I'm going to edit its structure. Instead of a mosaic tile, I'm going to search for carpet. There's one preloaded in. She's pretty ugly, but she's loaded in, and it has a surface pattern already on it of this sand. Okay, but there are other options if you want to load in maybe a not as ugly one. I'll click OK. I'll leave its thickness as 1/4 of an inch. And I'll do OK and OK one more time. And again, I'm going to use the draw line tool to draw in these floors and just trace around my interior. But since I also want this closet to have the same material, I could just kind of skip over like this. So while we wouldn't actually want to put carpeting underneath that stud, like we can just pretend it's in there. It's not going to mess up like our takeoff that much. And kind of the same thing then in like these rooms as well is if I'm going to carpet these closets, I can just do all of these in like one selection. But I could also absolutely just only do just the inside of this room and go around all of these kind of walls. Ba, ba, ba. Okay. So those are my 2 or 3 bedrooms, but my 2 bedroom areas carpeted. So I'll hit the green check. One thing before I select off of it that I did here that I didn't do here, if I go back into edit type and I go back into editing my structure and I go back into my carpet, I changed the color of my pattern for my tile, but I didn't do it in here. So I am going to come back and change this to a light gray. That way the carpet is not like overbearing compared to here. And then I'm going to add in my wood flooring kind of in the rest of this house here. So I'm going to start the floor tool. I'm going to go into edit type. I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to call this wood floor, or I'll call it wood finish. I don't know why. I'll edit my structure. I'm going to edit its finish. I'll search for floor, flooring. So we have this oak flooring. I think there's also like this wood planks one here. I'll just use the oak flooring. And I'm going to change its color to that light gray. So that way it's a little bit faded out. Trying to think if I want to use like these wood boards. Yeah, I'll use these wood boards. Why not? Instead of the straight lines. I'll do okay. I'll do okay. I'll do okay. And then I'm going to click on the line tool, pick somewhere to start, and kind of trace around. Got a few door thresholds I want to make sure I go around. Ba, ba, ba. Actually, I went too far. I'll do Control Z. could just go over this wall, but I'll go around it. I'll go over the pantry though. Now I'm starting to get lazy. Just clicking all the way around. Since I only brought the carpet to the inside of that room, I'm gonna bring this one over that threshold. Same thing in here. But since the tile takes over that one, I'm just gonna bring it only up to that edge. And I've also seen plenty of people make their walls or make their floors rather differently than I do. Really, like you could have just your whole system built out and then just only put a carpeted one where it already has your joist, your subfloor, and such, all just as one, kind of like how these ones are pre-built out. But I just kind of prefer my method. It makes more sense to me, because otherwise then you have kind of these weird gaps hanging out underneath walls. So I'm going to hit the green check. I've got my wood floor in there. Now there is also another way that you can kind of fade out your floor hatches if they're a little overbearing. So that's back in the visibility and graphics settings, which is keyboard shortcut VG. If we go to our floor settings, we can do something called half toning. So if I half tone it, it's going to fade it out. Since I already made them a pretty light gray, it's going to sort of super fade them, but we can half tone them. I just unhalf toned it to bring them back. We also can do a pattern override to the projection. So last time we did a pattern override to a cut for our walls. We can do a pattern override and not do like necessarily an override to the pattern, but we can do an override to the color. So like if they were currently black, so if I make them now black, what that's going to do is it's going to ignore whatever setting I had in those materials for the color. So if I forgot to change any of them to be a light gray, I could go in here and I could say, make them gray, or sometimes even I've seen drawings where like they're kind of like a brownish color, but I'm just going to leave mine. I'm going to clear overrides, and I'm just going to leave mine alone since I already kind of faded them out in the materials. But if yours are a little overbearing, you can just check off to half tone them, and then they'll really fade out into the distance. You could even, I'll go back into visibility and graphics. You could even go to your floors and do a pattern override of a solid fill that's white. And then now you have floors, but you just don't see any of the hatches. So you've got options. So many options, but I'm again just going to leave mine be. Next, let's add a foundation to her. So, actually, let's add our decks in next, and then we can delete our AutoCAD drawing. So I'm going to bring my AutoCAD drawing back real quick by clicking on my little light bulb here, selecting the AutoCAD drawing, which is kind of hard to get, but it was that line there, or this big thing around it. There's our deck as well. And then I'm going to, let's just reset all of them. So we're going to unhide everything. Click back on the light bulb to get out of that menu, and then click on the dimensions, hide them as a category. We could leave them in too, but I'll just keep them hidden. Really, I'm just going to use it to figure out like how far out I want these deck floors to go. So I'm going to start the floor tool. I'm going to use, I want to do kind of just like a big piece of concrete. So I'll just do like a generic 12-inch and then edit its type. And then I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to call it concrete. I'm going to edit its structure. I'm going to edit its material to be concrete, cast in place concrete. We can do a color override too of making it a lighter gray when it's in elevation. Okay, and okay. And then I'm just going to draw a rectangle just from where they kind of have their porch to this corner of the building. And I'll do another one over here from where they have their porch to this corner of the building. And I'll hit escape 100 times. And then I'll hit the green check mark. And I just realized too, I have a height offset of a 1/4 inch up. So we're going to change that to be 0. Excuse me. And now I can click on that AutoCAD file and I can delete it. I can just get rid of it because I don't really need her anymore. So let's look at her 3D again real quick. Got all of our different like hatches and patterns in there. And she's coming along. Okay. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is add in a foundation. So in order to add a foundation, I'm first going to have to make a level. To make a level, I need to be in an elevation view, not in necessarily the 3D view, just looking at the building from, say, the front or the side. I need to be in an elevation. So go ahead and click on any of these elevations. I do not care which one. Just go ahead and double click on it to enter an elevation. And then we can put in a new level. The level keyboard shortcut is keyboard shortcut LL, or in the architecture tab, it's this button here. And I'm just going to click over here once I get that feedback that I'm lined up. And I'm going to move across and click over here. Now, 2 things happened that are kind of a bummer. One, it called it level 3. That's a pretty easy fix. If I click on it, I'll call mine level 0. I just realized I'm in caps lock. And enter. 2 is it didn't make a floor plan view here for it. And that's because I didn't have this setting checked off. However, I can make a floor plan view of the foundation by going to the View tab and then clicking on Plan Views and saying I want to make a floor plan of level 0. And then it'll make one for me automatically. There's nothing in here that we can see, but we can at least work from or work with it here. Additionally, if I go back into my east elevation or really any of these 4, my current foundation is sitting 12 feet underneath my floor plan. So this is going to be like how far down our foundation walls go. We don't necessarily know how far down we want them to go right now. So I'm just going to make up a number. So I'm going to do what I call a slow double click on that number there, and I'm going to put it at -8 feet. So that way it's 8 feet down. Our foundation depth would vary based on like, do we have a basement? What's our soil bearing capacity? Where's our frost line going to be? All of those things would play factor into how far down that's going to have to go. But I'm going to go into my level 0 floor plan again, which I can go by double clicking on this spot elevation or double clicking on it in here. And I want to bring in a underlay of level 1 so I can kind of trace around it. So I'm going to go to my underlay options in my properties panel, and I'm going to set it as an underlay of level 1. But since I want to kind of trace around the base of the building, I want to make my orientation to be looking up. And actually what this line here is, this is the line we want to trace around, but that's actually our edge of our floor. But since our edge of our floor goes to our core, it'll work for us. It'll do what we need it to do. So now I have something to trace for my foundation walls. So back in the architecture tab, I'm going to start the wall tool by clicking on that button or keyboard shortcut WA. For my wall type, I'm going to use CMUs, which there is already in here. This generic 8-inch masonry will already be a CMU style wall. For my base constraint, I want them to start at level 0. For my top constraint, I want them to go up to level 1. And I want them, though, to have a top offset of -10 inches because we have a floor that's 10 inches thick that's taking up that space. And my location line, which I can change here or here, I'm going to set to core face exterior. And then I'm going to trace around that core boundary, which is that one there. So I'm going to start in that corner, and I'm going to trace a wall around. Don't worry about this overlap, because once you click, that overlap will go. And don't worry about that gap, because once you click, that gap will go. And boom, and boom, 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 boom. And then I'm going to hit escape 400,000 times. Let's go into our 3D view again real quick just to look at her. So the next thing we'll want to do is put a footing on our foundation wall. And the footing tool is keyboard shortcut FT, or in the structure tab, it is this button here. I don't like going to find it as a button. So it's keyboard shortcut FT. By default, our footing is 3 foot wide and 1 foot deep. Now we could change that if we knew what our footing had to be, but I'm just going to leave mine. I'm going to hover over one of these foundation walls and then use the tab to just click and put a chain on all of them. Or I could also, if I do Control Z to get rid of them, while I'm in the footing tool, which is FT, I could just click on each one of these walls individually. I do like that tab option to just kind of give the whole chain. I'll hit escape 600 times. Next, let's put a roof on here. And I'll do a roof in this video a little different than how I did in the in-class demo, just to see if I can fix like that issue you were having up here with this gap. So I'm going to go to my level 1 floor plan to start my roof. And I'm going to use the roof by footprint tool, which is this button here. And instead of using this generic 12-inch roof, I'm going to use this one that's already built out with layers, this roof rafter 8 inches. And I'm going to give my roof an automatic overhang of 2 feet when I go to make selections. So I'm going to do a 2-foot overhang. And I'm going to click on this wall, this wall, this one, and one of these two. But I'm not going to click on both of them. Excuse me. So I need this to be a completely closed loop. So to close these two off, I'm going to use the trim command, which is keyboard shortcut TR. And you'll see right next to your cursor, kind of that icon pop up. And we can make these two lines meet each other. Now, in order for this to be a gable style roof where it just slopes on this side and this side, I'm going to hit escape 400,000 times. I'm going to click on this edge and uncheck the define slope. I'll click on this edge and I'll uncheck define slope. So now these two sides aren't going to slope. We also want a slope of, I'll check the drawing real quick. It says 8/12. Really? I guess that's steeper than I thought. So we have 9/12. They say, I think I did 5/12 in class on both of these sides. I think it looked nicer, in my opinion. So I'll do 5/12 on them because I think that kind of looks better, my opinion. And then we also want to pay attention to our base level. So we want a base level of level 2. And then I'm going to hit the green check. It's going to look like nothing happened. But again, if we go into our 3D view, we now have a roof over this part of our house. To connect these walls to it, you're going to click on the wall, attach top to base, click on the roof. Click on the wall, attach top to base, click on the roof, orbit around, click on the wall, attach top to base, roof, click on the wall, attach top to base, roof, click on the wall, attach top to base, roof. Now, we'll deal with this problem here of this big old gap by going to our level 2 floor plan and essentially just drawing an exterior wall from here to here. So I'm in my level 2 floor plan. I'm going to start the wall tool, which is keyboard shortcut WA. I'm going to go find that exterior wall that I made. There it is. For location line, I'll do wall center, and I'll leave with base constraint level 2, top constraint unconnected. That's fine because I'm just going to put it attach it to the roof. So I'm just going to start there and go up till I find kind of where this edge one of this wall sits. So I believe it'd be right there. A warning might pop up saying walls overlap, which that'd be fine. So let's hit escape 100 times and go into my 3D view. One thing I notice is this wall doesn't have a hatch pattern, but all my other exterior walls do. And that's because I drew it inside out. So I had to just click on it to flip it around. I'm going to go back into level 2 just to make sure it's like centered and even, which it still is. That's cool and wonderful. And now I'm going to attach top to base. So I click on the wall, attach top to base, click on the roof. One thing I can also do to clean up all of this is join geometry. So I can use the keyboard shortcut. If you installed my keyboard shortcuts, it's JG to click on this wall and this wall to just kind of join them together. This wall and this one to join them together. If you didn't install my keyboard shortcuts, you just have to click on literally anything, and then join geometry is this button here. But we use join geometry a lot, so I really recommend you install the keyboard shortcuts. Next, we'll put a roof then on this part of our house as well. So to do that, I'm going to go back into my level 1 floor plan. I'm going to start the roof tool again for roof by footprint. And we already have that overhang. So I'm going to click on, which I don't understand why we don't have an overhang on this side of the porch, but we apparently don't. So I'm going to click on this one, and this one, which this actually goes out to this line here, which I'll use pick line instead of pick wall to do a 2-foot offset. And then, which way do I want to bring this one? Maybe that part? No, I think actually we can leave it to right there. So I'm going to use the draw line tool to bring this straight down, I just realized since I had a 2-foot offset, look at where it went. So I'll hit escape 100 times and delete that line. So let me go back to draw a line and make sure there's no offset. Beautiful. And then we need to just make sure it's one closed loop. So I'm going to hit escape 100 times, use the trim tool, keyboard shortcut TR to bring these two lines together. Hit escape 100 times. I'm going to get rid of the slope on this edge, uncheck the slope, click on this edge, uncheck the slope, and then I'm going to adjust these to also be 5/12 for our slopes. So you can make changes and edits to roofs. We did it in class prior, but I know what I want this roof to kind of be, so I'm going to leave it alone. And we also want to check our roof type and our roof base level. So I'm going to put it on level 2, the green check, and then I'm going to go into my 3D view. We've got to do a little bit of cleaning up on it, but not much. Let's see, let's look at it from the right. I don't like how it's not lined up there. So I'm going to try using the align command, which is keyboard shortcut AL, to align this edge to this one. Sweet. Perfect. Just what I wanted. So what I did was, again, I did undo. So I did AL for align. I took this roof's edge and this roof's edge so that way they would sit flush. And then I'm going to still have to do my attach top to base for all of my walls. So that is click on the wall, attach top to base, click on the roof, click on the wall, attach top to base, click on the roof. And then this one, where's that wall? Please let me select the wall. Sometimes it's hard to get just the wall. Let me try to tab my way through selections. I think I actually just had it. Nope, that's these two walls. If I orbit around kind of under it. Oop, I saw it. There we go. Attach top to base, click on the roof. Now, to fix this weird overlap, we actually wouldn't use join geometry though. We would use a different join tool, which if we click on one of the roofs, we would use join roof. So I could use join roof to join this edge and this face. Maybe not. Join roof, this edge to this face. Maybe not. Can I just do a join geometry? I can do just a join geometry, so we'll just do that. Pranked you. Join roof, though, would be, and if I hover over it, it'll give us a preview. It'd be kind of what we would do if we've got like a dormer or a valley that we want incorporated into it. How about that? All right. Next, let's put in our railings and our columns. So now in hindsight, I shouldn't have deleted my AutoCAD drawing, but I can just eyeball kind of where my columns and railings are going to go. So I'm going to go back into my level 1 floor plan. We had 3 columns here, and then we had railing, railing, railing. So I'm going to put my columns in first, which I first need to load in a wood timber column. So I'm going to do LF for load family. I'm going to go out of my windows into my columns. I'm going to bring in a wood timber column. And then I'm going to go into the architecture tab and click on this little arrow underneath the column button and do an architectural style column. This drawing or this house calls for 6 by 6 posts. So we have one, we'll say roughly here, another one about there, and then one in this corner. So I could have placed them on top of where they were, but I deleted the AutoCAD drawing, so I don't know where they are. we're supposed to go. I'll hit escape 100 times, and then I'll put a railing in between each one of these columns. So the railing tool is right here. Even though we have railing here, here, and here, since this column is in the middle of them, we have to do them as 3 separate railings. So I'm going to start the tool. I'm going to draw my railing path to this wall, and then I'm going to hit the green check. And then, to make a new railing here, I'm going to hit escape 100 times, go back into the railing tool. Sure, I'd love to save. I'll go from middle to middle. I'll hit the green check, hit escape 100 times, go into the railing tool, hit my green check, and then let's look at our 3D. So we've got our columns in there, and we've got our railing. If I want to move these columns up so they kind of like appear flush in our drawing, we can click on one and then right click and say select all instances in the project, and we can give them a top offset, and I usually sit and like play with this number until it looks right. So I'm going to go positive 2 inches. Let's look at it head on from the right. That didn't quite make it. Positive 3 inches. There we go. Also, I'm going to orbit around a little bit. I'm going to see if I can make these 2 edges flush, or if that kind of ruins everything going on in here. But kind of the benefit of doing the roof this way is that now I don't have that awkward gap in there. So I'm going to try a line. So that's, again, keyboard shortcut AL to this face to this face. If I remove constraint, let's see what happens. So it unjoined these. If I use join geometry, can I rejoin them? Apparently I can't. Unjoin. So I can't have those flush? I guess they must have ever so slightly different angles. They do. That's so weird. What if now, though, I go look at it from the right side and I do an align of this roof to this roof? And so then that becomes, so there must be something ever so slightly different with them. Well, I can deal with that. I just kind of wanted to see if it would let me. But sometimes roofs can be a little tricky. Okay, let's hit escape 100 times, and we're going to put in a foundation. Or excuse me, a site. We've already put in a foundation. Getting sleepy. So to put in our site, we could do it from the 3D view. I'd probably do it from the floor plan. So I'm going to go into my level 1 floor plan, and I'm going to zoom out quite a bit. And then I'm going to go to the massing and site tab, and I'm going to start a topo solid. So topo solids are essentially giant floors that mimic the earth. So I'm going to create a topo solid. I usually will make my topography thicker than 16 inches. So I'm going to go into edit type, and I could duplicate it, but I'm going to go edit this structure, and I'm going to say that, the earth is 15 feet deep at least. Could make it more, but that'll be probably plenty. I'm going to say okay and okay. And then I'm going to give it a height offset of let's do -1 foot. So that way it's just not sitting flush up against our level 1. And then I'm going to draw just a really big rectangle around here. So I just made a huge rectangle. I didn't take any measurements. I'll hit my green check. I do not want floors that go up to this bottom, so I'm going to click on Don't Attach. Again, if I go look at it 3-dimensionally, I now have this big old thing that is my ground. Let's turn on our section box tool for a moment, so that way we can kind of see a little bit of what we're looking at. So to turn a section box on in our 3D view is this button right here. And then this big box appears and we can slice the earth and slice our building open as well. So once I cut my building open, we can kind of see that a problem now that's happening is when it made this topography, it's now inside of our foundation and like it didn't excavate anything down. In order to excavate this, we need to create a floor just as something to excavate to in the foundation. I'm going to go into my level 1 floor plan, or my level 0 floor plan, excuse me. And I'm going to go into the architecture tab to create a floor. So I'm going to make a floor. The floor you make doesn't really matter what kind of floor it's going to be because we're just going to hide it anywhere we can see it anyway. So I'll just make mine a generic 12-inch floor. And then I'm going to just draw it around my foundation. So I'm going to hover over one wall, hit tab, and I'll put it to the inside face. It doesn't really matter if you go to outside or inside, but I'll do mine to the inside face. And then I'm going to offset it up from level 0, I don't know, like 4 feet, positive 4 feet. And I'll click OK. And I'm going to say no to this question. Well, I'm going to say no to it. I kind of want to see what happens if I say yes, but I'm going to say no. Then I'm going to go back to looking at it 3D. So essentially what I want to do is excavate it to this part. So I'm going to click on the topography. I'm going to click on the excavate tool, and then I'm going to click on this floor. And it's going to dig out the ground from that floor. I'm going to look at it directly from the right to kind of show you what's going to happen if I hit escape a bunch of times. So if I move this floor around, it's going to move the hole that it digs it with. So that height offset was really kind of me just making a number up in this project. But in, a different one, maybe I've got a specific like frost line or a specific height that I'm trying to reach with it. But I just kind of made a number up for it. So anywhere this floor is visible in a project, we're going to want to hide it. So I'm going to right click on that floor and say hide in view element. I just want to hide that floor. I don't want to hide all floors. So that way that floor is gone in our project. Now let's add a ceiling into the project as well. So to add our ceiling, I'm going to go back into our level 1 floor plan. I'll zoom back in on my project and I'll start the ceiling tool. And instead of using this auto ceiling, I'm going to sketch a ceiling in. And I'm going to hover over, I'm actually going to click on pick walls first. Then I'm going to hover over an exterior wall, hit tab, and then click. We want this to go to the inside, so I'm going to flip it to go to the inside. And then for our wall system, I don't want to use acoustic ceiling tiles. I'm going to select this gypsum wall board on metal stud, but I'm going to edit the type and duplicate it. So I'm going to call mine gypsum wall board on 2x6, which should give you a hint as to what I'm going to make it. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to edit its structure, and I'm just going to change this row 2. Instead of being a metal stud, I'm going to search for wood joist. Why don't I just search for joist? And I'll use this one with bat insulation. That makes sense for a ceiling. And then for its thickness, I'm going to make it 5.5 since it's a 2x6. I'll say OK. I'll say OK. And before I hit this check mark, I'm going to put mine at a height offset of 10 feet. So that way it's kind of sitting flush with where the top of my walls are. And I'll then click the green check. And it's going to look like nothing happened, but if I go into my 3D view and I use my section box to cut my building open, we can see that I've got a ceiling going on in there. And because of my roof, it even looks like it kind of is coming through a little bit on this side. But I bet I can use join geometry to, ew. Let me think. I'm going to click on that ceiling. I'm going to edit its boundary. Go into my level 1 floor plan. Really, I just got to take this side in and scooch it in more. But now I got to use brain cells. I wasn't planning on doing that in this video. I'll think about it in a second. Because it'll come to me what my solution is going to be. It might be that I've got to just make an adjustment to that roof. Really, the immediate plan that I would have would be just, okay, let's take this roof, and instead of it being at 10 feet, let's put it at, say, 9 feet. Now then, all of my interior walls are too tall. So then what I could do then would be to click on all of my interior walls and bring them down 1 foot. So really, I could also take this number and I could play with it. Like if I put it at 9 foot 10, is it still peeking through? What if I put it at 9 foot 9? 9 foot 8.5. There we go. Now she's not peeking through, at least in the 3D view and like the elevations. Sometimes it's about kind of faking it until we can get it to look the way we want. Okay. Next, let me just make sure. Yes. Next, we'll work on creating a building section. So I'm going to go into my level 1 floor plan and I'm going to make a section cut. So there is a shortcut button for the section tool. It is this button right here. And to make a building section, we first need to place our section head, which I'll put up here, and then all the way through our building and our section tail to click to place it. Now my section is facing this way, looking towards this side of the building, and I placed it here because it's cutting through this window, this doorway, and this window, which is kind of perfect and kind of what I want. If yours isn't, you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard when you have the section selected to flip it or move it, and you can click on these arrows to flip it from one side to another. We also would like to split our section into kind of just a head and just a tail, and I'm going to turn off my temporary isolate for my dimensions, so I'm going to reset so they come back, because what I want is to make sure that like this head and tail are not like interfering with any of these dimensions that I have. So I don't want them like overlapping any of those dimension lines. So that this way that it's just not this extra line in there kind of busying things up unnecessarily. Now to go into my building section view, I could double click on the section head that's going to go into it, or by creating this view, it's made a new area called sections, and I could double click on section 1 to open it up. So 2 ways I can get into this view. Now to clean this drawing up, I could, or easiest way to clean this drawing up is I'm going to want to make sure that I'm in the have thin lines turned off. So I can see line weight in my drawing. If thin lines was on, it would look like this. So I want thin lines off. That's going to make this a heck of a lot easier for me. Then I don't ever want this floor showing up in a view. I just use this to help me excavate out. So I'm going to click on that floor and then right click, hide in view element. I don't want to hide all floors. I just want to hide that one. My next step is I want to get rid of the topography. You can kind of see how it's overshadowing, or this big ground line is going over our foundation wall. So we want to use the cut geometry tool to cut the topography out of the foundation. So to do that, if you installed my keyboard shortcuts, it's keyboard shortcut CG, and then we would click on the site, click on the foundation wall, and you can see that it kind of cleaned that foundation wall up. If you didn't install keyboard shortcuts, you just need to click on anything at all in your drawing, and then the cut geometry tool is up here. So we would click on the site, click on the footing, and you could see that that hatch pattern left it. We'll do the same thing on this side. So I'm still in the cut geometry tool. I can tell because it's telling me down here how to use it. So I'm going to click on the site, click on the wall, click on the site, click on the footing. The next thing I'm going to do is join geometry to join all of my connections. So I want to join the footing to the foundation wall to the floor, floor to the wall, wall to the ceiling, wall to the roof. Sometimes even ceiling to the roof, depending on how you have your drawing. So to do that, again, would be, let me hit escape 100 times. It could be click on anything in your drawing at all. It doesn't even have to be the thing you're trying to join. And then join geometry is up here. Or keyboard shortcut JG. And I'm going to do footing to foundation wall. And that big heavy line went away. Then I'm going to turn off this multiple join option. Foundation wall to floor. Floor to wall. Wall to roof. Wall to ceiling. Ceiling to this wall. Ceiling to this wall. Ceiling to this wall. Roof to wall. Wall to floor, which, whoops, didn't click on it. Wall to floor. Wall to foundation. Foundation to footing. So we want to clean up all of those connections. And additionally, we want to make sure that we have our detail level set to fine. So that way it'll kind of bring in all of those details of all of our different materials. There's much further we could do into a section view like this, but for this project, we'll just kind of leave this section view as is. The final thing we'll detail into the building in this video is going to be putting in all of our components, which would be things like furniture, our bathroom pieces, and then our kitchen stuff as well. So I'm going to go back into my level 1 floor plan, and my dimensions again are a little bit in the way right now for when I want to go put some parts or pieces in here. So I can hide them by clicking on one, and then I could either go to my glasses to hide that category, or I could have also right-clicked on them and say hide in view. So I'll do kind of my bathrooms first, and again, I'm just going to eyeball them to have the components roughly where they are in the AutoCAD version of this file. But first, I've got to load some of the bathroom stuff in. So I'm going to go into Load Family, which we've set as keyboard shortcut LF, or you could go to Insert, Load Autodesk Family. And I'm going to go out of the columns. And we can search for stuff, but you have to know the specific name of what you're searching for. So if I want stuff for the bathroom, I'm going to go like into this plumbing category. And then I'm just going to bring in this bathtub. I know it looks tiny, but it'll come in a good enough size. So I'm going to bring this bathtub in by checking off bathtub. I loaded it. And now to place it, I'm going to start the component tool, which is keyboard shortcut CM, or this button here. And by default, it gave me sort of this tiny bathtub. But if I go into here, I've got loads of different sizes. So I'm going to use this 60 by 30, and I'm just going to kind of place it in here. For my drawing, let me hit escape. My wall here isn't long enough, so I'm just going to click on that wall and just scooch it down. So it is. There is no floor in here. It's just kind of like this cavity in there just to help fill in space for this bathtub. I'm going to use load family again to bring in a toilet. So again, that's LF for load family. You can also search up here for like toilet instead of going through everything. I'll just use this domestic toilet. And then I'll use the component tool to place it, which is keyboard shortcut CM. If we want to flip stuff around, we can use the space bar to flip it. We've got a toilet in here as well. Now I have a bathtub here, but since I've already loaded in the bathtub, if I try going into load family and I try to load it again, you're gonna think it didn't load anything in, when in reality it did. We've got to go into the component tool, which again is here, or keyboard shortcut CM, and then go into your components and find it in here. So once it's loaded in, you can't load it a second time. So I'll use another one of these 60 by 30. I'll use space to kind of space it around. And then I'm just going to put it on this wall here, hit escape a bunch of times. I might even kind of zoom in and fiddle it so it looks like it fits a bit better. For in our bathrooms too, for our sinks, I'm going to go into LF for load family. And I'm going to search for vanity. I'm going to use this vanity right here. Now, when I search for vanity, it's only searching the plumbing category for it, which is sort of helpful, but we'll see when we go to do like our utility closet that it's not going to be too much help in there. So I'm going to load that vanity in, and then I'm going to start the component tool, which again is CM. Since that was the last thing I loaded in, it's just automatically here. So I can use the space bar to flip it. This wall, and then space bar to flip and put one here. I'll hit escape 100 times. And let's do our utility closet next. So I'll put in like my washer and my dryer. So I'm going to do load family to load those in. If I search for washer, I get this stacked one, but I don't want a stacked one. And that's because it's only looking in this plumbing category. So I have to go back to all results, and then it shows me all of the washers. So sometimes it's going to say like nothing found. Go see here if you're in a specific category. So I'm going to bring this washer in. I always try to get like the most bare bones stuff as possible. Then I'll use CM for component to put a washer in. Escape 100 times. I'll use load family, and I'm going to search for dryer. I'm going to load a dryer in. CM for component. Place that in. Hit escape 100 times. We'll put our water heater in. Load family. Search for water heater. Probably use this one. CM. Place that in there. Let's load in our air handler as well. So I'll stay in the component tool. I don't necessarily have to hit escape. LF to find it. If I search for air handler, air handling, there we go. I don't know which exact one we want. I'm going to pick one that looks pretty tall and skinny. So this guy seems like he's going to fit in our closet. And so since I didn't exit the command, it just automatically kind of put me in the air hand, put it in here. There are a few different sizes, but it looks like it gave us the smallest size to begin with. So this is going to fit. So we'll put that one in. Ba-ba. Let's also put in like some beds in our bedroom. So again, LF for load family. I'll search for bed and pick whichever bed you like, except that one. That's weird. Bed in each one of the bedrooms. You can use the space bar to spin them. Escape a bunch of times. To put in stuff like closets, that's a little bit different. So, but it's still going to be LF to load in the closet, shelf and such. So I'll search for closet, and here is the closet shelf. I was going to say, I don't know why a bidet is popping up, but this is a water closet. This is all the toilet stuff. But I'm going to bring in closet shelf and pole. And I would still use the component tool to place it, which is keyboard shortcut CM. But we don't want to place it on a face. We're going to place it on a work plane. And then we're going to click on the wall and go across. Click on my wall and go across. Wall and across. And I'll hit escape 100 times. Now what I would typically do is I would typically use join geometry, JG, to take this one and join them together. But it's sort of been glitching out this week. I think it has to do with the 2026 update that like stuff isn't joining together correctly. I think since they updated these components in here, some of them are working a little weird in 2025. So I'll put another closet pull in here and here and here as well. So again, that's going to be CM. We want to make sure we're making it on a work plane. And then we're going to go from one to the other. From one wall. Oh, I'm placing it on the wrong side. So I'm just going to hit escape once. I'm going to go from this wall to here. From this wall. Escape, escape, escape. And then the last couple of components we'll put in are our kitchen stuff. So I'm first going to do my fridge, my range, and like my countertop with my sink in it. And then I'll show you like my sort of cheating way of putting in cabinets, because I don't like putting in base cabinets. So I'm going to use load family to load in of my kitchen stuff. If you want to search through different things, all of your kitchen stuff is going to be in the specialty equipment. And then domestic. And you'll even see that there's high end and mid-range. I'm going to look pretty much just through mid-range stuff. And I'm going to bring in like this electric range. So I'm just going to check it off. I'm also going to bring in like this fridge. So that way I can bring in like two things just in the one load family. And then I'm going to start the component tool. And so I've got this fridge here. I'll use the space bar to flip it. Fridge is kind of hanging out right up against this wall in the AutoCAD file, so that's where I'll put mine. And then for my range, I'll use the 30-inch one. I'll put that one kind of right here. Sort of center it, and then I'll put in my countertops. So for my counters, what I would do is first load them in. So again, load family. All of your cabinets and countertops are going to be in the category of casework. And we even have countertops. So I like just the plain countertop and the countertop with sink already installed with it. So I'll do the sink one first. I'll load this one in. And then I'm going to use CM for component. Use the space bar to flip it around. And then we can place it in. So we want this edge that has the two lines that should be up against the wall. That's the backsplash. Once we have our counter placed, we can hit escape a bunch of times, click on it, and you can change its like length. So you can shorten it if it needs to get shortened. And I can even drag this middle grip here to kind of move the sink. So if I want the sink underneath the window, I can move it. I'm going to put another straight countertop just right here to here to kind of overlap these. I'm going to do LF for load family. I'm going to bring just a plain countertop. I could use this L-shaped one, but I'm not gonna. Gonna be a little lazy about it. Then I'm going to use CM for component. I'll put it next to the range. And I'll shrink it down. So I'm just clicking and dragging that to shrink it down. Putting this one on this side. Grabbing that grip to shrink it down. And then I'm going to flip this one. Click to place it next to the fridge. Click that grip and drag it down. So now one negative part of this is that we have these awkward corners, which we could fix with join geometry, which again is keyboard shortcut JG, of selecting this counter and selecting this counter. But for some reason, this only started happening to me recently. It makes the counter disappear. And if I do Control Z to bring them back, what's also curious is if I go into my 3D view and I hit escape 100 times, and I grab this grip to just kind of take this section box and rip the top of my house off, which I'll bring that one in too because that's kind of annoying that that's big. We're so close to being done. Is if I look at it three-dimensionally here in my house and I do JG for join geometry, I can join these together and then it does like what I wanted and what I intended. But then when I look at it in the level 1 floor plan, it's vanished. So I am just going to leave this awkward corner for now and hope that when I update to 2026, it stops doing that. But you probably noticed when I looked at it 3D that like my cabinets are just or my countertops are just kind of floating here. So what I like to do as a little cheat, instead of going into load family and going back into casework and like selecting all these base cabinets and then trying to get them to fit and go in together, what I like to do instead is I'm going to hit cancel is I like to make my own custom fake counter or base cabinet component. So to do something like that, I would click on this little arrow underneath the component tool, and I'm going to say I would like to model a component in place. I always give any model in place component I make, I always give it a generic model because that way, if it has less stuff defining it, I can kind of get away with more. And you have to give it a name, so I'm going to call mine cabinet. And then what I'm going to do is create an extrusion. And I'm going to use this line tool to just kind of draw around where my cabinets would be going. I'm not bringing it all the way out to the edge of the counter because cabinets usually have a little bit of that extra or that lip. So I am just making sure that it's going to be a full piece and around here as well. Give the little bit of a lip. So I'm just skipping over where like my stove is. Then I'm going to use this rectangle tool to just put a really rough hole around my sink. And we could even like apply material to it if we wanted to. And we could change this depth at it at this moment. But I'm just going to hit this green check and go look at it 3D so you can kind of see what I did. Essentially, I've made just like a little fake countertop. And I can take this grip and I could pull it up for it. The other thing I like to do with them is then use this align function to say I want the bottom face of this actual counter and the top face of my extrusion to just be flush. Then I'm going to finish my model. And now I have sort of like a counter underneath it. If I needed to add details to it, like if I needed to put like cabinet faces on it for an interior elevation, I could go draw those in an interior elevation manually using a tool called Detail Line. But I just really don't like messing around with the base cabinets. So that's kind of my little cheat or fix for it. One last thing before we save and upload this is in my 3D view here. I like to play around with some of my graphic display options. So that is the keyboard shortcut GD. And then I like having what's called ambient shadows present. So if I hit apply, these ambient shadows immediately kind of give like a little bit of depth to the house while we're looking at it. You can also, in visual styles, use what's called consistent colors. So that way, like, you get to see a little bit of color going on in your drawing. And if you wanted, say, like your siding to give more of the appearance of siding, that is when we went into this edit type and we edit our structure and we went into something like our siding material. That is what checking off this box does, is it makes it give a little bit more, gives it kind of that color for it. But I personally don't really like consistent colors. I like working in hidden line, but I do like having those ambient shadows on. And so with that, our house or our building is done being modeled, and we are ready for our next step, which is going to be placing it all into what Revit's version of Paperspace is, or called Sheets. So that will be its own separate video, and I hope you found this helpful.